Welcome everyone to another Eye of the Serpent Tarot Pick a Card reading. Today's reading is about how do other people see you. So we're going to look at how they see you at the moment, how you would like them to see you if there's a difference, or if you want to enhance what is already a good reputation that you might currently enjoy, and then any information about misunderstandings about you that there might be that you can also address. So as with all pick a card readings, the big choice is which pile to choose, which reading to choose. Pile 1 has an amethyst crystal on it, pile 2 has a lapis lazuli, and pile 3 has a tiger eye. You may feel drawn to more than one pile, and if that's the case, by all means listen to both, because there could be an amalgamation of messages across more than one. But otherwise, choose the one that you feel most drawn to, and the timestamps for the readings are in the description box below. If you already know, you're probably already racing to your reading as I speak, but if not, pause the video and contemplate the choices, and then when you know which is right for you, I'll see you in your reading. Welcome pile 1 to your reading. So to start this reading, these were the cards that were underneath the crystal that you chose, and they come from a couple of decks that I think are useful in getting some overarching concepts about what the theme for this reading is, which is how people might see you, things that you understand that they see in you, and maybe things that would surprise you. So the first one is an archetype, and the second is from the Oracle of Shadows and Light. So it picks up shadow elements or light elements depending upon which card is chosen. This shows a really interesting combination of ways that you come across to people. The sage archetype here is that you are seen by others as being very wise, as being very still and contemplative when it is necessary, and understanding something about whatever world that you live in, work in, however you interact with people. You're someone that people think has a wise view of the world, has real knowledge, has real experience that is helpful to them. So many people would probably come to you for advice and counsel. Interestingly enough, the shadow thing that they see in you is someone who's possibly suffered for being different, potentially suffered for what your expression was, whether it's emotional, sexual, gender, could be anything. There's a lot about sensuality in this card, so there's a lot in that space, but this card is saying that that expression that you have is beautiful, and that people know that that is beautiful, but that possibly you had to battle quite a bit to have that accepted, whether that was in your family, whether it was in culture, whether it's still a battle that you have because what you do is unusual. But they see you as someone who has wisdom, but it is wisdom that was hard won. Was won by being a bit of an outsider, about needing to look at how to be accepted and seen as beautiful when some people would condemn something in you. So there are certainly some people around you that have condemned you. They're not of any particular worth to your life at the moment, pile 1. The people that matter see you as someone who's rising above that and who is courageous in taking on and showing their inner beauty. So I think many of you, yes, have maybe lived a bit on the fringes or been unconventional in some way, but people think that that really made you wise. So let's have a look at what the tarot has to tell us about how people are responding to you at the moment. So we'll start with how they're viewing you at the moment as an overarching thing. And as I said before, then we'll have a look at what you would like to change, if anything. And lastly, what might be unconscious or hidden even to you about the way that you express yourself and the way that people respond to you. So firstly, what's happening at the moment? Okay, so this is really picking up this energy. People do believe that you're groundbreaking, that you are doing something that is new, you're expressing something that is new, you're on the fringes of some social movement, something in your workplace, something in your friendship circle, maybe even really moving away from your family. But you are a groundbreaker, and you have won at least one major battle around this. And I think people really admire that in you. They think that is fantastic. They see you as a bit of a role model, pile 1. So that there is a real sense people understand, or at least the people that matter to you understand what you've been through and see and share in celebrating your victory. They also think that you're someone who hasn't had much help along the way. And maybe you don't even at this point have a lot of money at your disposal. You may still be struggling to start to establish yourself in the material world. This feels very much like an emotional or identity issue that you've been dealing with and you've had the victory with, but it maybe has come at some cost, and people see that. And they worry, I think, that some of that original fire that you have might get dimmed by the need to fit into more conventional society or conventional ways to earn a living, for instance, or to have material outcomes. So there's a little bit here where people look so much up to you, I think, pile one, that they worry that in the end you too will be forced into being more sort of conventional. So I guess there's a pattern that sometimes happens with people who are groundbreakers, that at some point they become, well, they're youthful. If you think about it, the youthful exuberance of something that is different and groundbreaking often becomes the settled person in middle and older age. So maybe it's just that. Maybe they think that something like that could occur with you. So I think they're sort of very happy that you've done that, but I think that they see something around you, pile one, that might limit what you can do in this space in the future, or that might force you into more conventional areas. Possibly some of my pile one have just gone into a job, for instance, that is in quite a conventional environment, and they feel like some of your fire and your energy might be dimmed by that. Yeah, and that you might become more committed and more conservative because of it. You might literally have had to change the way you dress and the way you express yourself in that environment. It could also be that there are some people in that environment who see you as far more conventional, and then the people who truly know you see you as this groundbreaking person. But there's something in that for you, pile one, about whether or not, and this may not be accurate. This could be, just something that people fear for you rather than something that's going to occur. But I do think that the coming off that great admiration is a fear that life might take the edges off you and require you to conform in some way. So let's have a look at how you'd like people to be seeing you, particularly with that sort of energy around you, pile one. Okay, this is a very heroic set of cards, and I don't mean that you are, because I actually think that you've had to be a hero already in your life, pile one, in some way. You've had to be different, you've had to stand out, and you really want people to see that. But what you want them to see is that you will always come from the heart. You will always be philosophically pure with what you believe in, and you'll make all your decisions from your heart, and you're prepared to take on the burden that's around that. So I think that there would be a part of you that would be very disappointed if you thought that people felt that the fire and the energy and the difference and the unconventionality of what you're doing is going to get dimmed. You would never want people to think that. You would prefer to take on all the pressure around it rather than have people think that you would give in to your original vision, this original heart, this original philosophy, and that you will make the choices that are necessary. There might be a part of you, however, because the Death card is there, because that can be a card of transformation, where underneath it all, much as you want people to see you as continuing to be this wise but revolutionary type of person, there might be a part of you that it shares the concern secretly, that you may be caused over time to transform into something else, that the energy may not hold out. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that's going to be the case, pile one, but you may within yourself have a similar concern a bit, but you really cleave strongly to the heart and the philosophy of what you're approaching. You'd also want people to see you as someone who is worthy of love and worthy of this sort of philosophical respect, and someone who's prepared to go the extra mile for love. So I think some of this, particularly with that sensuality, is about drawing the right partner to you, and someone who can really align to and understand who you are on a very fundamental level. So that energy is there as well too. So it may be that for quite a few of my pile one, you aren't in a relationship, or if you are, you're still sorting through what that might mean. And there might be a part of you that would be saying, well, if I do have to change, it's not going to be for convention's sake. It's not going to be for money. It's not going to be for a job. It's not going to be for society. But if I did change, it would be for love. So that's interesting. So let's have a look at what energy might be in all of this that even you aren't aware of, like unconscious energy about how you come across to others. Okay, so whether you know it or not, pile one, you do come across as someone who's incredibly loyal and incredibly grounded, and someone that people really trust and rely on, which might be why they're worried you could change. They don't want you to change. This is again this deep admiration for somebody who is so mature, who is wise, who's come through a lot, and who's stayed true to themselves and understood their innate beauty, even where they might be a stranger in a strange land. So that's definitely there. People also see a lot of pain from your childhood, I would say. A lot of pain from maybe family expectations or something in that area. So that people understand that, whether or not maybe you haven't even talked about it. Maybe that's why it's coming up in the sort of unconscious level. But people do get that, and they see in you, this great capacity for love. And certainly if you are looking for love, I think that's coming along in the not too distant future if it isn't already here. And if it is already here, I think there's a real potential for this, because the person there has truly understood your inner beauty. But I think the other thing that people might not understand, or that you may not even understand about yourself, is that there is a time when it will be right to put down your swords and leave the battleground. That I think in many ways you've been a revolutionary, but you've been a revolutionary within your own sense and your own identity. You've been a role model for people, but you don't have to battle that all the time. There is a point at which it is absolutely right for you to settle into something that is true to your heart. It's not going to change you. You're not materially driven, but something true to your heart. Because this battle that maybe, as I say, came from when you were very young, and it's probably got some societal sort of issue to it, is not a battle that you have to do all the time, pile one. So let's ask the Oracle for some energy. A couple of cards around energy that would help you stay true to who you are and to maximize what's positive. And I think there's a lot that's positive and accurate here in how people see you. Okay, pleasure and growth. So again, that gives me the sense, if you're not in a relationship at the moment, pile one, you will be soon. If you are, then it has enormous potential to you. I think this is saying take pleasure in who you are. Take pleasure in love, because it's always the right thing. If something comes from love, it's always wise. It's always right. Allow yourself to grow into your full potential. You have a lot more potential than possibly you think that you have. And in understanding that and enjoying it, and in showing people that you can have a wonderful, full, contented and fulfilled life being who you are, you become a role model for others. You take away any of that lingering issue that people might have, that maybe one is only ever like this when they're young. You can do that through your life. You can sustain it. So I'm going to also have a look at some astrology energy, but this is also just to really pick up things about you that people see, and whether or not they're accurate, and we'll look at what the energies are to get a sense about that. But it's part also of how you come across to people in your life. Okay, so the Saturn return age is the wisdom, that's the sage. So that's really picking up how people see you as wise. Many of you may be around the time of the Saturn return. The Saturn return happens twice, maybe 3 times in your life, depending on how old you live to, because it happens every roughly 30 years. So it's when Saturn returns to its natal placement in your chart, and it takes somewhere between 28 and 30 years to do that. So your first Saturn return is usually between the ages of 28 and 30, and it is when you really come into your own and really consolidate who you are in a structural, sustained way. And some people deal with Saturn returns really easily because they're naturally able to take on those lessons, and I think you would be one of those people. Other people can struggle because it's letting go of youth and going into something that is more, not conservative, but more structured and more settled. And so I think many of you are probably at that age, because that's why I think people are wondering what the impact of things like your career or relationships around you may be having on this firebrand energy that you have for change and for living your truth. But I think that you deal with this energy well. The latest Saturn return that comes between around about 58 and 60 is more around the freedom that you usually get when you can retire at that point, having consolidated yourself. I don't think, I mean, maybe some of my pile one people are at that point in their life, and this is really about maintaining a change that's happened somewhere during their life where they've really broken free from old conventions and come into something new. So it's not that it can't be that, but I think that quite a few of you are probably in that age group, or you're ahead of your time and you're younger and you're already dealing with those sorts of issues, and this really connects to that sage energy. They also see you as someone who's very much about your partners, and not just romantic partners, but all partners. The 7th house is about relationships with others. So they see you as an excellent friend, a good lover if you're it's a romantic thing, a good person within a family. Even if you've had family issues, I think that they believe that you would be a good role model within the family. So that's positive. And they see you as being very sensitive and protective, so protective of yourself and protective of others. I do think that most people would think you had to be. This is why I think they understand that you've come from something that was quite stressful and difficult, and you've had to learn to protect yourself, and in doing that you protect others. So I think that's incredibly positive for you, Pile 1. I think people see you, as I say, as such a role model and such an important role model. And their only fear is that you move away from that. But I don't think you will. I think you'll just evolve into a more settled and happy and fulfilled version of it. So to close out the reading, I'm going to just ask the divine for a couple of messages, affirmation messages from an oracle that's called Manifesting Your Greatness, so that you make the most of this energy that you're bringing not only to your life but to the world, I think, Pile 1. Oh, okay, so it says simplify and get out of your own way. So I think maybe you do, as I said, maybe some little part of you is just as worried about kind of compromising and settling as people are worried for you. But this, I think, is saying, don't worry about that. You're not going to do that. And you can have love and you can have structure in your life without giving up who you really are. At the moment, you're sitting in your head a bit too much. And yes, you are wise, but remember that sensual and romantic and emotional side of you, and then simplify. You know, really, when it comes right down to it, the most simple thing of all is being yourself, the most simple thing and the most difficult thing. So, but if you can get to that point of simplifying everything down to what is true and authentic to you, then you continue with how people already see you, which is as a very true and authentic person. So Pile 1, I don't think that authenticity and wisdom has been easily won, and I congratulate you on having achieved that. I have every faith that you will continue with it. I do hope that this resonated for you and was helpful. And if so, please like the video, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe, because I'd love to see you in future Pick a Card readings. Welcome, Pile 2, to your reading. So to start the reading, these were the cards that were underneath the crystal that you chose, and one is an archetype and one comes from an oracle that looks at shadows and light. So I thought these are cards that can help us get an overarching sense of how people view you, that we can then get more information on as we go through the reading with tarot and other oracle cards. So this is really interesting. My first thing that I would say is that you might scare a few people, Pile 2, and not in a really bad way, but I think you come across, or people think that you have a lot of esoteric knowledge. I think that many of my pile 2 are probably people who either work in spiritual areas or do it as a hobby, very knowledgeable about that stuff, very good at manifesting things spiritually and materially. Because you've got the alchemist card, so that is bringing all the sorts of spiritual energies and material energies together for the ultimate grand work, the outcome of spiritual ascension and knowledge. People thought alchemy was really about turning base metal into gold, but it was really, that was a metaphor for the spirit. Though interestingly enough, because alchemists used a lot of material properties to do their work, they also were the forefathers of chemists. So there's certainly a tradition of knowledge associated with that, and I think people see you as someone very knowledgeable in that area. And because of that, with the out trick or treating, some people might find that a bit scary or a little bit too mysterious. And however, the message of that card is that really there's nothing to be frightened of in that. There's nothing to be frightened of in knowledge. There's nothing to be frightened of in spiritual wisdom. But you may, the way that you present yourself, the way you dress, the way you talk. I mean, you may even, some of my pile 2 might enjoy that to some extent. You might like to really heighten that sense of yourself on the basis that, well, if somebody's going to be scared of that, then they're probably not the right person to be in your life. So some of you may do that, and others it just might be that some people find that side of spirituality a little bit scary, or they have very traditional views and think it's sort of dark, but you're not dark at all. Alchemists are not dark. So let's have a look at how people see you using tarot. Okay, pile 2, I think firstly that people see you as a little bit of a lone wolf potentially, even from your family. I think you might have been quite different to your family. I mean, some of you may have come from a family that was into spiritual things and so forth, but even if so, I think you've maybe taken a path, or you've been part of a different spiritual tribe to your family, because there's a sense that people see you as someone disconnected from your past, that you're not connected to sort of old family memories, or possibly even that you have some that you would rather forget. And this is probably people who know you better than other people. And they see you as someone who has gone through a lot of struggles and used a lot of energy, and is still yet to fully manifest what you want to manifest. But they do believe that you have the energy to do it, and they are ready, your friends, your real friends and your soul tribe are ready to celebrate with you. There's something a bit witchy about this, so some of you may come across as, maybe not just come across as, but may follow sort of witchcraft sort of practices as well. So there's a sense of that rule of 3 and the sort of the group around you. So some of you literally may be in that sort of spiritual practice and may have those sort of collaborators and companions on the journey. And so people see you as something like that, connected to something in some way, and quite overt about it. You're not hiding your spiritual beliefs. And they also see you as someone who doesn't let go of a cause too easily, someone who maybe sometimes should have walked away from certain things or certain people, but you don't do that too easily. You're someone who really tries to connect and to improve. Because you're on a process of self-improvement, you give the same latitude to other people, but I think some people think that you give more than you really need to. So let's have a look at how you'd like people to see you, if there's anything different to what I was just saying. So I think you don't mind that people understand that you've been through pain. I think you're quite open to that, but I would think you would want people to think that you feel that you've learnt from that, and that you've gained from that, and that you can face pain. And if there is pain in your spiritual process, that you're open to doing that. You find joy in the process of evolution, and you would want people to see that. You would also want people to see that you're prepared to fight the good fight. And it's interesting that it's with that card. So I think sometimes you want people to see that you don't give up on something, and some people sometimes think you have causes that you probably should give up on. Now, I'm not saying they're right and you're wrong. I'm just saying that that's a bit of a disconnect on that level. But I don't think it comes from a bad place. I think people would say, yes, you definitely are like that. It's just sometimes the people that you're helping or the people that you're trying to work with are maybe not worth the effort. So just be aware some people think that. You also want people to see you as someone who is advanced in this art, really, who has really gone through the tradition and has really developed to a real point of wisdom. And I think that's true of you, and I think people do see that of you. And it might be partly because I think many of you are in a group. I think you may be a little bit ahead of many of your group, and you'd kind of like people to recognise that. Whether they all do, I don't know, because always within groups there's the moderation of all the different egos involved. But you definitely would like people to see you that way, and I think they do. It's just that sometimes you scare them. But you mean well. You don't want people really to be scared of you. I mean, as I say, maybe there are a few people in particular parts of society which it amuses you. And you play up into that if necessary. But the people that matter to you, you don't want to scare them. You want them to see you as someone who's warm and caring. So let's have a look at what there might be about you that people see that is unconscious to you or could be surprising to you in some way. Okay, so I think what's surprising, I think that's picking up this energy here. I think that some people feel that you're not judgmental enough. And look, I think it's a wonderful thing not to be judgmental, but I think there could be some truth to what they're doing, pile two. There could be a point at which you do need to sometimes just sort of let something go. And you may not even really be aware of that because you really have a very big heart. So that is there, and you're not really conscious to the degree that is there, that you will maybe not make the assessment that needs to be made sometimes. But a no decision becomes a decision, pile too. So in a way, you continue to have maybe energies and people in your life because you haven't made the decision to move away from them. So just think in those terms, be aware of that. People also see you as having a very structured way of doing things. They don't see you. I think you probably think that most people would see you as a bit eccentric because of what you're doing. But in fact, they do think that there's a structure to what you do. And there's probably more of a structure to it than you think. And there's probably more of a pattern from your past and your pain that has created that structure. So I guess one of the issues around that would be not to get too rigid, to always be able to move with the flow of things. Don't think there's a huge problem with that because you're very connected to your heart, but there may be something there. They definitely see you as generous. And too generous sometimes, but they definitely see you as generous. And there's a generous energy coming to you as a result of that. There's true celebration and collaboration, which is lovely. But they see you as hurt for some reason. They see you as carrying a hurt. And now whether that's because of your childhood, it may well be, or whether for some of my pile too, there has been a recent hurt romantically or whatever. You're not really conscious that people are focusing on that and thinking about it for you. It may well even be that it's hurt by a relationship that they think you shouldn't be in, that you are in, for instance. Who knows? That could be that. It could be anything. But they definitely see a hurt that you're carrying, and they feel that you're too generous to people, and sometimes you need to be more judgmental. So, given that, I think people really admire you, which is nice. Let's have a look at some energetic sort of advice for you around closing any of those gaps between what you would want people to think and what they do think of you. Okay, so this is saying pleasure and action. So enjoy yourself a bit. I do think maybe you carry the burden of other people a bit too much, and they're probably right about it too. Enjoy yourself a bit more. It doesn't all have to be about philosophy and spirituality. You can actually have fun and take action. Maybe they think you live in your head a bit. Maybe they think your philosophy becomes too important and that traps you, particularly in causes that maybe don't need to be followed anymore. So I also want to have a look at the astrological energy around this, just a little bit more information about perhaps how people see you, pile two. Okay. So firstly, that's really nice. You wanted people to see you with the World Tarot card, and now we've got people are seeing you at the 10th house of the world. So they do. They see you as a master of what you've done. So you've certainly achieved that, and they do see you as someone who has progressed a long way in your spiritual path. And I think they see you as someone who is happy to live that in the world, maybe more than some of the rest of them feel comfortable to do. They see you as someone who leads out in some way on that path, which is really nice. They also see you as incredibly psychic and connected to your soul, which again doesn't surprise me with the alchemist there. But also they see you as a fantastic friend. And you probably have very good friends around you. But as I say, some of them think that you're too nice to people who don't deserve it. So I'm going to keep saying that because I suspect they're right, Pile 2. Ultimately, you've got to make that decision for yourself. But I suspect they may well be right. You are, I think, for all that people might think you're a bit scary, you've actually got a huge heart. And that probably goes with doing alchemy, honestly. But, there is still the material world, and some people could take advantage of that. So I just think your friends are a little bit protective of you there. So to close out, I'm going to use a pack of cards that have some affirmations. It's called Manifesting Your Greatness. So I think it's a nice way to get a couple of last messages from the universe about making sure how people see you is how you would like them to see you and what is real to you. Oh, wow. Believe you are magic. Well, I think you are, Pile 2, and I think people see that and shine some light on it. So don't be self-effacing. Some of them may feel, again, with this generosity of spirit that you're too self-effacing with what you've achieved. You're allowed to be proud of what you've achieved because it's significant. So shine the light on that and believe in yourself. I think in many ways you do, but it's almost like maybe you believe because you've gone through all the sort of conventional learnings of what you've done, but there's something much more fundamental to you that is magical, Pile 2. So believe in it because other people do believe it of you. So I hope that was interesting and informative, and I hope that it resonates for you and you can relate to it. And if so, please like the video, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe, because I'd love to see you in future Pick a Card readings. Welcome, Pile 3, to your reading. These first two cards are the cards that were underneath the crystal that you chose, and one represents an archetype and the other represents either a shadow or a light in the way that people see you. So this is really interesting as a connection. I think you're highly entrancing to people. People want to be close to you, and they see you as someone who you can be close to, someone who is very trustworthy, someone who's very nurturing, and someone who gives new hope. And the reason I say that is the archetype is the intimate. So that can be around love relationships. So certainly there may be an element of this reading which is around how the most close person to you sees you, and that might be part of what you were really interested in seeing here. But even broader than that, it is about being someone that people can confide in, people can feel close to, people feel that they can trust. And Violet Angel is all about new dawn and new hopes. So I think that you're also someone that people go to feel clarity and hope again. You give them a sense, even if they've been through a lot, that there is hope on the horizon and they feel nurtured. Now, some of the issues that can come with that, of course, Pile 3, is that you do have to look after your own energy, because there's a lot about people coming and taking from you and connecting to you there. So you need to also obviously make things balance. So it will be interesting to see about the sort of difference between how people see you and how you would like to be seen, and also anything unconscious, which are the three areas that we're going to look at in this reading for the tarot. So we're going to start with a little bit more information from the tarot about how people see you. Okay, that's very much picking up that energy. For a start, there definitely is some people who've come to this reading where you're particularly concerned about the closest person to you. And the good news is that this person sees you as an ideal companion, an ideal love match. So if you've come here and it's really about a soul twin, twin flame, or just the person that you're with at the moment, they definitely see you as someone that they want to be really close to. And they see you as someone who is victorious against the dark night of the soul. So it may be that your most special person had gone through a lot at the time that they came across you, and they see you as the person who really gave them that sense of hope again and took them out of a battle. They were in battle in terms of their sort of energy and their mental sort of state of mind. So they see you as the shining light on the hill and the person they really want to be with. For other people, they see you similarly. They see you as someone who gives a really strong sense of connection and that sort of intimacy and caring. They see you as someone who is, even in a non-romantic sense, is someone who is really a positive in their life and one that helps them win. But again, it's against the battles that they face. So I do think there's an issue that you would attract a lot of people to you that need that help. Now, some of you may do that in the profession, so that might be part and parcel of what you do. With this sort of energy, you could very well be in that sort of space. You may even be someone who works in helping people resolve sexual issues within relationships with that kind of energy. So not even just your sort of more standard therapy, but there may be even therapy around relationships that you do and bringing out the best in them. But of course, as I say, that's a lovely energy, and it's lovely that people see that in you, and I'm sure you have that capacity in you. There's a reason they see that. But you do also have to look after yourself. So let's have a look and see how you would like people to see you. So this is interesting. So I think many of my pile 3, your capacity to be so empathic and so caring has not come easily. This is showing that you yourself have gone through some difficulties around relationships in the past, possibly around family relationships, or even, maybe you were married at some point and you're not now. You want people to know that you're very loyal and very stable, but that you haven't necessarily always had that coming to you, that you've had to deal with people who weren't. And so and that in itself is a burden for you. So I think that there is, and this is my instinct when I was looking at this, that for many of my pile 3 people, if you're not doing this as a profession, and even if you are, there might be a little bit of a lack in balance of people understanding that you aren't just there for them. And I don't think this comes from a bad place. I don't think people mean to be selfish. But sometimes if you have that sort of energy, that's what people prescribe into the relationship. And the last thing they really see is that you need support and you have issues as well. They see the Queen of Coins, which you want them to see, that you do want them to see that you're loyal and strong and nurturing, but they don't see the effort that you're taking in that, and they don't see that you've suffered your own issues. And there may be times when you feel like it just isn't reciprocated. So it'll be interesting to see what else is unconscious and what advice Spirit has around this in terms of maybe getting a little bit of the spotlight on you occasionally as well. So let's have a look at what's unconscious around this, what you may not even realise about either what people see about you or what you would like them to see. Okay, that's interesting. I think, because this is what's unconscious for you, I do think that some of you have gone through some sort of a breakup that's maybe had legal implications and been a bit of a battle. So that's there for some of you. But you'll be conscious of that. I think that what's maybe unconscious is that there is a part of you that, because you bring such balance and closure to other people, that you consequently are living in a sense of lack at all times for yourself. You are feeling embattled. You're feeling like you're not seen and that there isn't balance. But it is kind of, on one part it's conscious, but on one part it's not. I think that you feel on an unconscious level that there should be almost a more philosophically balanced understanding of things and understanding of you. And you wouldn't demand it of other people. You just sort of think it should be there, but it's without demanding it in some ways it isn't. And so I think underneath you always live with a kind of level of being alone, that even if you're in a relationship, and I think that some of you are in a really good relationship, there is still the sense potentially with most people of being alone. So if you're in the good relationship, I think that's great. That actually starts to solve some of it. But for those who that isn't what's going on, then there is a sense that you're always left alone at the end of the day. And if you needed to ring somebody up, they may not be there for you. So let's have a look at how to address that a bit. Let's ask the divines for some energies around what you could do or start to, an approach you could take to start to shift that. Because as I say, most of the time people don't mean this. They just get used to the fact that that's what you are in the relationship, and shifting it can be difficult. You can do it sort of subtly and by asking for stuff and being a little bit more overt about that, and some people will respond well to it and some won't. But it may more be about how you establish relationships to start with so that they're a bit more balanced. But anyway, let's see what the divine has to say. Okay, so they're saying that there's a balance of acceptance and discernment. So I think the divine is saying it's always going to be in you to draw these people to you because, quite frankly, you are very well equipped to deal with it. And so accept that that's part of your life path and part of who you are. But practice discernment. Don't let everybody in. Some people are much more greedy, even if they don't know it, of attention and support from you than others. So if you practice discernment around that, you may well find that those that remain in your life coming out of this are the ones that you could ask about something and you would find, surprisingly possibly to you, that they were there for you. Like maybe you just haven't asked. Maybe you're just used to this pattern yourself that you wouldn't think to ask. You think that people should just see it and know it. But people don't unless you ask. So possibly that's the thing, the discernment and the action to do that. So I'm going to ask for a little bit more information, astrological information about how people see you, to see if that can help as well, unlocking this little conundrum. It's not a major thing, but it is about balance, and you are just as deserving of support as anybody else, possibly more deserving than many people actually, with what you give to others. So let's see what the divine has to say about other astrological information about how people see you. Wow. So I think people really see you as this way of being, as part of your spirit and part of your vocation. Many of you may very well be in this as a job, and people may think, well, if you do it in your job, you should do it with your friends as well. So there's a sense that they see this as an article of faith for you, and what your learning has been about, and you've actually brought a lot of learning to this, possibly academic. So they see this as an article of faith for you, and they see it as your destiny. They think you're a destined healer, a destined intimate support for people. And they probably just think that all you need to do, because we've got the 12th house here, is just escape into yourself sometimes. And I think maybe what happens is that's exactly what you do, that sometimes you just get time out and I can't be contacted, and you go, no contact, nothing. And people think that's what you do. Because this is who you are, and that's just what you do to replenish your batteries. They're not necessarily seeing that giving that support back to you would replenish your batteries in a different way. So maybe again it's a sort of message of like, ask for help sometimes, ask for support, rather than just withdrawing and hoping that somebody will come to you, because they're misinterpreting it, pile 3. So lastly, I'm going to ask for a couple of affirmation messages from an oracle that's called Manifesting Your Greatness, to help you bridge this gap a little bit further. Okay, so firstly it says one small change, and I do think often with these sort of things that's exactly what happens, is that if you make one small change of asking for help, even if it's something you don't even necessarily need help with, but asking somebody for help can shift the relationship. And certainly if somebody says no, it gives you some information about the relationship. So I think that's affirming that sense that you need to change what you do a little bit. Not a lot, but just a bit, to shift that balance in the relationship. It also says lighten up. So maybe what happens is that most of the time that you spend with people, it's dealing with all their issues. So maybe one of the things you could ask to do with some of your friends, if they're in that kind of relationship with you, is let's go and have fun. Let's go and do that. And if this does connect to your lover that you're with, then again, go out and have fun, and make the change of asking them to do something and arrange that so that you don't replicate this sort of patterning, this sort of imbalance in what would otherwise be a very good relationship. Because that person, if for those that resonates, that person really loves you and really sees you as their ideal. So a slight change in that and bringing more fun into the thing would certainly help. So either way, that should shift this energy. People, you're kind of psychic, Pile 3. You kind of empathise on a high level and can see into people's souls, but a lot of people can't. And so they take you on face value and they don't really know that you have those depths and those needs as well. So yeah, just one small change. Ask for some help. Ask to go and do something fun. Ban talking about emotional issues occasionally. And if you are doing this as a career, be clear with your friends that you aren't replicating the career in life all the time. Again, that you want to have fun. And I think that will shift a lot for you and close that gap, Pile 3. So I really admire people like you, Pile 3. So I really, really want you to be able to get the support that you need, because you richly deserve it. That degree of caring for other people is not common. So the last thing I would ever like to see is that was taken advantage of. So I do hope that this is helpful. I hope that it resonates. And if it does, please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so, because I'd love to see you in future Pick a Card readings.